Welcome back. You're watching Startup Central with me, Nayantara Rai, working from home. Remember, this is the only show of its kind on Indian television dedicated to startups, technology, innovation, disruption, entrepreneurship. Now, recently you saw a mega hackathon where winners were announced for the Prime Minister Aatmanirbhar App Innovation Challenge. We've been getting the winners right here on Startup Central, and we're getting another one today. He's joining us all the way from London. He's a crusader fighting fake news and misinformation. His app is called Logically, and his name is Lyric Jain. Lyric, thanks so much for joining us here on Startup Central. I love your name. I've never heard this name before. It's very unique. I hope it's not fake, but it's just a joke over there. Tell us a little bit about Logically.
It's a pleasure to be with you here today. And yes, the name's not fake. My sister's actually called Rhythm, so we're a musical family that's very bad at music. So that's the backstory there. So Logically, we've been around for a few years now. We've been around for about 3 years, fighting fake news at scale around the world, and especially in India. India has been a country that's been ravaged by misinformation, from kind of health misinformation during COVID to communal rumors that have resulted in deaths on WhatsApp. So we've been working both directly with our users, our consumer users, as well as our public sector partners, such as law enforcement, to help curb misinformation through the Logically app. So we provide users with context-rich news through our app, but also a one-stop verification service where they can forward us any claim, any article, or any image from social media or from their messaging app, and we verify it for them as fast as we can using a combination of automation as well as our fact-checking team.
So I wanted to ask you now, Lyric, that and let's just get this out of the way first up. See, because you won a challenge that was thrown open by the Prime Minister, it was a government challenge as well. And I have to ask you this: did you win also because you have perhaps fought a lot of fake news or misinformation, not from the ruling government or the ruling party, but against the opposition in India?
No, definitely not. We are a non-partisan organization, and we're accredited to be non-partisan by various international bodies. So we don't really focus on the partisan aspects of misinformation. We like to tell people that it really isn't a partisan issue anymore. It's almost a national security issue. So especially when it comes to, say, a more recent decision that was taken by the government to ban Chinese news apps. We know for a fact how these feeds on Chinese news apps were being influenced by the CCP, how content was being moderated and how certain content was being promoted. So when we think of misinformation and disinformation, that's what we focus on. And on the other side of the spectrum, we focus on kind of communal rumors that go viral and result in really bad outcomes. So partisanship is really far away from what we do.
So tell me something, how big are you in India? How many users are in India? Can you share with us what would be some of the biggest headlines from fake news that you've been able to correct and dismantle?
Sure, absolutely. So we have about 150,000 users in India, which about 50,000 are active on a daily basis. So these people act as our whistleblowers of misinformation. They, on a daily basis, share misinformation with us from wherever they might be coming across it, whether be it on WhatsApp or on social media. Kind of big examples of us acting in India is probably during 3 very critical times. So last year, during the Lok Sabha campaign, we identified nearly 50,000 articles that contained false information, and we also fact-checked nearly 10,000 claims that our users shared with us. And then later last year, we worked closely with various stakeholders in Maharashtra to identify various information threats that were circulating online and on social media during the month of October. And more recently, during COVID, we've been working very closely with law enforcement partners as well as hospitals to make sure that we identify kind of troublemakers and identify who and what kind of problematic information might be being shared on various platforms, and put out fact checks and high quality content to debunk problematic content.
So as the world rages a war against fake news, misinformation, smear campaigns, figuring out what's real, what's fake, all of that, can I ask you that what is different about Logically? How do you stand out? Because what we've also seen the last couple of years, because there's a demand for it, mushrooming of a lot of apps which are in the business of fact checking.
Sure. It's really been remarkable to watch the rise of this of the packaging industry. I think it's still in very early stages, and what we'd like to do is really bring the industrial revolution to this industry. There's a lot of great players out there that have been in this market for years, for decades, and others that have joined in very recently. And a lot of them tend to be editorially led civil society organizations. So that with the best of intentions, these are organizations that aren't able to scale very effectively, and probably the unit economics don't quite make sense to allow for that scaling. And what we are is we are a technology company that also has a large fact-checking organization that's a part of it. So we're able to really operationalize fact-checking in a way that ensures we're able to fact-check claims at scale and fact-check them really quickly, so that we limit the number of people that are exposed to problematic content before a fact-check is out. And we're able to do it in an efficient way, so that we don't need kind of hundreds of thousands of people fact-checking around the world at full scale, where we might be able to do it with a few thousand people instead.
Lyric, I tried to ask you this earlier, so let me just rephrase it and ask it point blankly. What is the most ludicrous thing in India that Logically has fact-checked and fact-corrected? The most outrageous lie, the most outrageous fake news.
Sure. So there's a lot of it out there in India, to be honest. Like it explodes in various different contexts. So earlier this year, a big one going around was like, drink bitter gourd juice and it'll prevent COVID, and it'll prevent you from catching COVID. That's outright false. There's no basis of that in any sense of reality. Last year, there was claims around kind of the citizenship of, say, if Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi was supposedly supposed to be a British citizen. No, there's no reality in that claim. And other times it's just images. It's these memes that are so obviously these have been modified and manipulated, but people might not have the best literacy skills to be able to distinguish between manipulated media and not. So there's all kinds of pictures with people Photoshop doing things that they're clearly not. That also we work to debunk.
Okay. You were at the start of the interview also talking about the Chinese app ban, and you can see the campaign that would have been carried out in China and all of that. What about in India? Did you notice anything interesting? Was there misinformation?
Absolutely. So these apps directly, whether it's kind of UC News and other news apps that originated from China, these apps fundamentally have to comply to various Chinese moderation laws. So right now, there's a lot of countries around the world that are concerned about even TikTok, even though it's not a news app. It's kind of an entertainment app, but it does sometimes have a geopolitical edge to it. I think it's providing a country that is adversarial in nature a foothold into your domestic market. It's allowing the CCP directly to influence the Indian population, and we've seen huge evidence of this happening. It's simply compare your say, for example, a Google newsfeed or a Facebook newsfeed to a newsfeed that you were getting from these apps, and it's very evident to see what kind of pro-Chinese narratives were being promoted. So definitely that until recently was happening in India.
I want to now ask you that you won a massive hackathon. You've been announced one of the winners by an app innovation challenge announced by the India's Prime Minister. What is this going to mean for Logically? And, because you are in the business of debunking fake news, debunking misinformation, is it a concern at all? Same question, the first question that I asked you, that now you could be seen associated with a particular ruling party or with a particular government dispensation.
Sure, absolutely. Again, that's a huge concern, and it would be one that we take very seriously. in our work, naturally, we have to work quite closely with public sector stakeholders because it's all well and good identifying misinformation, but we need to do something about it as well. And naturally, as an organization, logically, it finds itself at times working with all kinds of public sector stakeholders, be it at state level, local level, or at national level. So what we pride ourselves on is our fact-checking team is completely independent of the rest of the Logically organization. This organization has been accredited to the international fact-checking standards, and we each fact check that is performed biologically goes through at least 3 fact checkers. So it becomes incredibly hard for individual biases to seep in as well. So we're very conscious about how any work that we do might be observed by external stakeholders, but we have huge, rigorous internal measures to ensure that biases don't seep into our fact-checking processes. But also, from a transparency point of view, we always declare whenever we end up working with a public sector partner. So, for example, right now, this was something that was awarded to us by MyGov, which is a civil service body, not necessarily a partisan body. So we make it a strict point to only work with civil service and with mental organizations, not parties.
No, but Lyric, if I could come in there. Lyric, if I could come in there, apologies for doing that because we're running out of time. Pardon me for such a simplistic analogy, but around the world, you will always have more police than robbers and criminals, right? I would imagine, and I apologize for such a simplistic analogy, but that's going to be very true for the digital world as well, for the smear campaigns, the spread of misinformation, the spread of fake news, sometimes which is done by mighty organizations, billion-dollar organizations, or even governments, ruling parties, opposition parties, all of that. They all have a motive. Let's leave that aside. But for someone who's heading a startup, logically, how big a concern is it also now that you're going to have the Facebooks of the world, the LinkedIns of the world, the Microsofts of the world, the Googles of the world saying we will also do fact check? The Twitters of the world, they're also doing fact checks. They're taking down what they think is inappropriate or wrong or is fake news. Where do you stand on that front?
Sure, that's 2 slightly different questions. Again, to be very clear, regardless of who the stakeholder putting out misinformation is, we will fact check them. It doesn't matter if it's the prime minister or a leader of a country, or if it's if it's the Aatmanirbhar, it doesn't matter. We will fact check them. On the side of platforms being involved in fact checking, most platforms themselves don't fact check content. That would put them in a very, very tricky position policy-wise and liability-wise. So, for example, Facebook started fact-checking content itself tomorrow. It would find itself in a lot of hot water in the US, in Europe, and in India, because legally they've been skirting this ground of being a publisher and a platform. But fact-checking your own content very firmly makes you a publisher, and you'd be held liable to kind of libel standards, etc. So we take the work that we do very seriously. We appreciate that there's all kinds of stakeholders involved: public sector, private sector, brands, consumers, and we want to help address the root cause of the problem at scale. And we feel that that's the service that we provide, and we're looking to build an ecosystem around us of both public sector organizations and private sector organizations that can benefit from the work that we're doing in fact checking these viral claims.
Okay, so here's wishing you all the very best, Lyric. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We look forward to more interviews. Want to keep getting you back here on Startup Central so you can keep telling us the most ludicrous things that you've had to fact check. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're completely out of time. Many thanks for joining us on this edition of Startup Central. We will be back tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m.